The late afternoon sun had already started sinking behind the skyline of Long Beach, California. The boardwalk shimmered with golden reflections bouncing off the ocean waves. Joggers passed by, couples ate snacks, and skateboarders rolled back and forth, shouting and laughing. In the midst of this lively scene, a tall man walked calmly along the sidewalk, holding a grocery bag with basic items: tea, vegetables, and a few spices. His long black coat swayed behind him with each slow step. His posture was straight, steady, and relaxed, almost too quiet for a place filled with noise and motion. It was Steven Seagal, no bodyguards, no flashy clothes, no celebrity behavior, just a quiet walk home with groceries in hand. Even though thousands recognized him from movies, Seagal rarely cared for attention. He lived like he fought quietly, with awareness, without ever needing to show force. As he walked past a row of parked cars, something unusual caught his eye. A young man, roughly in his early 20s, was being pressed against the hood of a police cruiser. His backpack lay on the ground. 2 cops stood near him. 1 officer stayed calm and followed protocol. He checked IDs, asked questions. The other officer, however, paced like an angry bull. He was tall, muscular, shaved head, sunglasses still on even though the sun was nearly gone, and his jaw was clenched like he was daring someone to provoke him. His name was Officer Riker. Steven didn't interfere, not yet. He watched quietly from a short distance, evaluating body language and tone. The young man looked scared but cooperative. The calm cop asked, "Why were you running?" The young man panicked. "Sir, I was jogging. I took off my headphones when you yelled. I didn't hear you at first." Officer Riker scoffed. "Likely story. You kids think you're smart." He stepped closer, shoving the young man's shoulder. The calm cop warned softly, "Riker, take it easy." Riker ignored him, whispering harshly into the young man's face, "If you don't want trouble, you should look like you're not causing any. You dress like a punk. You get treated like a punk. Got it?" Steven slowly exhaled. He wasn't angry, but he could already sense what this was: authority without restraint. Ego with a badge that was dangerous. Steven walked closer. Officer Riker turned, eyes narrowing at Seagal's silent presence. "Keep moving, buddy. This isn't a show." Steven replied calmly, "I wasn't watching for entertainment. I was watching because respect matters." Riker let out a sharp laugh. "Respect? What are you, some kind of monk? Move on." Steven didn't move. "I'm simply asking you to talk, not intimidate." Riker stepped forward aggressively. "And I'm telling you to walk away." The calm officer recognized the situation escalating. He stepped between them gently. "Sir, it's okay. Thanks for your concern. We've got it handled." Steven nodded respectfully to him. "I can see that. You're doing your job, professionally." Riker glared. "Oh, so now you're evaluating how we do our job. Who do you think you are?" Steven looked directly into his eyes, calm, controlled, unafraid. "Someone who knows restraint." It was a simple sentence, but it hit Riker harder than a punch. Riker's ego snapped. "Get lost," he barked, shoving Steven's shoulder. The grocery bag hit the pavement. The tomatoes rolled away into the street. The glass jar of tea shattered on the ground. Steven didn't raise a hand. He simply looked down at his broken groceries. The calm officer shouted, "Riker, enough." But Riker didn't listen. He shoved Steven again, this time harder. Steven's body barely moved. His balance didn't shift. His posture didn't change. Steven's voice remained steady. "If you need to use force, use it responsibly." Riker roared, "You think you can lecture me? Let's see how you like getting cuffed." He grabbed Steven's wrist aggressively. Wrong move. Steven didn't slam him, didn't hit him, didn't twist violently. With one smooth movement, he shifted his wrist slightly and redirected Riker's grip, turning the officer's own pressure back toward him. Riker gasped, caught in his own hold, unable to move. The calm officer shouted, "Riker, stop resisting. He's not attacking you." Steven released the pressure instantly and stepped back, hands open. "You're losing control," Steven said softly. Riker's face turned red from pain, humiliation, and ego burning like fire. Without thinking, without hesitation, without understanding who he was dealing with, he threw a punch. It came fast, fueled by anger, not technique. Steven shifted a mere inch, and Riker's fist met nothing but air. Steven's elbow gently guided Riker's momentum downward, causing the officer to stumble, but Riker didn't stop. He lashed out again, another punch wild, sloppy. Steven stepped aside again, placing a palm on Riker's shoulder, redirecting him like water guiding a rock. Steven didn't attack. He simply let the officer attack himself. The crowd forming around them watched in disbelief. Some filmed it, others whispered, "Who is that guy? Why isn't he fighting back?" Riker roared, throwing a final desperate strike. Steven caught the wrist gently, turned his palm upward, and held him in a non-violent joint lock. Riker froze not because he couldn't move, but because if he did, his own force would break his wrist. The comm officer stepped forward, speechless. "Riker, stand down." Steven let go slowly, release without injury. Riker's arm dropped, numb and defeated. This humiliation hit harder than any punch. Steven bent down, calmly gathering his groceries, ignoring the attention that made it worse for Riker. "You're under arrest." Riker shouted. Reaching again, the comm officer grabbed his partner's arm sharply. "No, he's not. Do you want to throw your career away?" Riker froze, breathing heavily, sweat down his temple. The crowd stared. Phones recorded. The comm officer turned to Steven. "Sir, I am so sorry. Please allow me to compensate for your groceries." Steven shook his head. "It's not about groceries. It's about responsibility." Riker shouted again, voice cracking. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Steven looked at him, not angry, not smug, just disappointed. "Someone who's been training law enforcement for over 30 years. Silence fell like a hammer. Some people gasped. Others whispered, "He trains cops. Is he serious? That's Steven Seagal." The comm officer's eyes widened. He knew exactly who he was now. Riker's arrogance suddenly turned into horror. Steven picked up the shattered tea jar's pieces, placing them respectfully in his bag so no one would step on them. Then he walked away quietly. He didn't need revenge, but Riker wasn't done paying for what he started. Because tomorrow, everyone at the police station would know exactly what the hot-headed officer had done. The next morning, the Long Beach Police Department buzzed like a beehive struck by a broomstick. Not because of a riot, not because of a criminal chase, but because of a video uploaded overnight. 10,000 views, then 50,000, then 100,000. Clip titles flooded social media. Cop loses it on Steven Seagal and gets embarrassed. Officer picks wrong fight with martial arts legend. Comments weren't kind to Officer Riker. Some mocked him, others questioned his training, and many demanded consequences. Screens inside the department showed news channels replaying the video. Riker arrived late, his jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. As soon as he entered, heads turned. Conversations fell silent. Some officers looked away awkwardly, others smirked slightly. No one wanted to be on his side, not now. The comm officer from yesterday, Officer Torres, approached him slowly. "Riker, the captain wants to see you." Riker sighed heavily. Of course he does. He marched toward Captain Holt's office, each step heavier than the last. He swung the door open without knocking. Captain Holt stared at him from behind his desk, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. "Sit." Riker sat. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Holt pressed play on the video. The office filled with the sound of Riker screaming, shoving, punching, and a calm, controlled Seagal effortlessly neutralizing him without throwing a strike. Holt paused the frame at the moment. Seagal blocked the punch with a simple shift of the hand. "Explain this," Holt demanded. Riker forced a breath. "He provoked me." "Really?" Holt raised a brow. "By asking for respect." He was interfering. He stood at a distance. He challenged my authority. He questioned your lack of restraint. Holt leaned forward. "And your response proved him right." Riker swallowed hard. Holt's voice grew colder. "That man is Steven Seagal, former Reserve Deputy Chief, law enforcement trainer, hand-to-hand combat instructor. He has trained FBI agents, police tactical units, SWAT, and even military branches." Riker's face paled. Holt continued, "And you assaulted him in public, on camera?" Silence burned the room. Holt added firmly, "You will apologize to him." Riker's fists clenched. "I'm not apologizing to that." Holt cut him off sharply. "If you don't, consider yourself suspended indefinitely." The words hit Riker like a bullet. His jaw shook. He wanted to fight, yell, defend himself, anything, but he wasn't stupid enough to lose his job. He forced a bitter nod. Holt pointed at the door. "You'll do it today." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Steven Seagal sat in a small tea house. He often visited a quiet place run by an old Japanese couple who knew him not as a celebrity, but as a loyal customer who loved jasmine tea. Mrs. Mori set a fresh pot in front of him. "Steven-san, we saw the video. That officer was very rude." Steven smiled gently. "Sometimes anger teaches faster than kindness." Mr. Mori chuckled from the counter. "Maybe you should charge him for lessons." Steven chuckled softly. He couldn't afford them. Humility costs more than money. The door chimed. A shadow stood at the entrance, anxious, frustrated, embarrassed. "Officer Riker." Mrs. Mori's face tightened with disapproval. Steven calmly turned to see the officer walk toward him stiffly, as if his ego weighed more than his body. Riker didn't sit. He stood like a soldier, jaw tight, eyes full of forced acceptance. "I was instructed to apologize." Steven poured himself tea. "Then you should do it properly, not because you were instructed." Riker's breath trembled. "Look, I was out of line. I shouldn't have shoved you, and I shouldn't have thrown a punch." Steven didn't rush to reply. He set the teapot down gently. "Why did you?" Riker blinked, thrown off by the question. Because you looked at me like I was doing something wrong. And were you?" Riker didn't answer. He didn't need to. Steven continued, "The badge gives authority. It doesn't replace discipline." Those words hit harder than the joint lock the day before. Riker exhaled. "I've had complaints before. I just don't like being challenged." Steven nodded. "Only insecure men fear challenge. Strength doesn't need fear." Riker swallowed his pride piece by piece. "I get it. I need to control myself better." Mrs. Mori spoke up quietly from behind the counter. "A real officer protects peace even from himself." Riker glanced at her, surprised by the wisdom coming from such a gentle voice. Steven lifted his teacup. "Sit, have tea." Riker sat awkwardly. Steven poured him a cup. The aroma of jasmine filled the silence. Riker finally muttered, "So, do you do this with everyone who attacks you? Drink tea with them?" Steven smiled faintly. "Only the ones who might learn something." Riker stared into the teacup as though it held answers. He wasn't used to calm, he wasn't used to forgiveness, and he definitely wasn't used to being taught instead of obeyed. After a few moments, Riker cleared his throat. Will you teach me, not martial arts, just discipline?" Steven took a slow sip. "Discipline isn't taught. It's built, like a muscle." Riker frowned. "So how do I build it?" Steven pointed at the tea. "Start by learning patience." Hours later, at the police department, Riker returned to the station, quieter than he had ever been. The angry storm inside him was gone. Something else replaced it, not peace exactly, but awareness. Officer Torres approached him carefully. "You okay?" Riker nodded. "Better than yesterday." Torres raised an eyebrow. "So, what happened?" Riker shrugged. "He didn't fight me. He didn't insult me. He didn't humiliate me." Torres smiled. "He didn't have to." Riker looked him in the eye. "Exactly." Before Torres could reply, Captain Holt walked in with a group of officers and detectives. The room hushed. Holt scanned the crowd. "We have an announcement. Due to recent events and the need for updated defensive tactics training, our department will receive a special instructor." Whispers erupted. Riker already knew. Holt stepped aside, and Steven Seagal walked into the station. Some officers stood straighter. Others whispered in shock. A few applauded out of respect. Steven didn't smile or pose. He simply nodded politely. "I'm here to teach you how to protect people and protect yourselves from your own anger." Riker felt his chest tighten. This wasn't punishment. This was opportunity. Steven continued, his voice firm but calm. "Control isn't about strength. It's about balance. Law enforcement must never become law aggression. Those words echoed through the station like a commandment. Riker stood a little taller, not from pride, but from responsibility. He knew this training would change him, but what he didn't know was that very soon he would need it more than ever, because within 24 hours, Long Beach was about to face a threat that would require every lesson Seagal had to offer, smile and scars, because discipline leaves a mark deeper than a punch. The following day began like any other. Officers reported in, the dispatch radios crackled, paperwork stacked across desks, but there was a new energy in the Long Beach Police Department. Steven Seagal's presence changed the atmosphere entirely. In the training bay, officers practiced footwork, pressure control, wrist locks, and defensive redirection, all under the watchful eye of one of the most skilled martial artists in Hollywood and law enforcement history. Even the most confident officers moved with humility, and standing front row, focused more than anyone else, was Officer Riker. The man who once treated every situation like a battlefield now listened quietly, corrected his stance, and followed instructions with respect. It was a transformation no one expected, especially not Riker himself. But the test of his new discipline was coming. Before lunch break, the intercom buzzed sharply. All units, Code 2, 111 in progress, armed robbery, multiple suspects, possible hostages. The station froze. Then chaos erupted. Officers rushed to gear up, radios clicked, engines roared outside. Captain Holt emerged from his office. Riker, Torres, you're with me. Seagal, if you're willing, join us. Steven nodded calmly. Let's go. 6 minutes later, police cruisers screeched to a stop outside Harbor Pacific Bank, a glass, walled building now filled with terror. Through the front doors, shadows moved inside, and panicked voices echoed faintly. A young officer whispered, 3 armed suspects, they've herded everyone to the floor. Another added, 1 already fired a warning shot, they're panicking. Panic and guns, a deadly combination. Captain Holt gathered his team. Negotiators on the way. Until then, we hold positions. But Riker stepped forward, words calm, steady. Captain, with respect, they're unstable. Negotiator might be too slow. Someone needs to make contact before one of them pulls the trigger out of fear. Torres blinked at him. Holt stared closely. This wasn't the aggressive Riker. This was a controlled man assessing danger logically. Steven observed with a faint, approving nod. Holt considered, you're thinking clearly today. Riker swallowed. Because of him, he glanced at Steven. Steven put a hand on Riker's shoulder. Lower your heart rate. Don't let adrenaline speak. Riker inhaled slow, deep, controlled. The transformation was complete. Holt finally nodded, all right. Riker, Steven, you two approach with caution. Talk, keep them calm. As they neared the glass door, Riker raised his hand slowly, showing no threat. Inside, one of the robbers, a jittery man with shaking hands and desperate eyes, pointed a gun right at them. Stay back. I swear I'll shoot. Riker remained steady. Nobody wants that. We're just here to talk. Steven scanned the room silently. He saw fear, not cruelty. Panic, not intention. These weren't hardened criminals. They were young and over their heads, spiraling fast. The second suspect barked from behind a counter. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. The alarm went off too soon. Riker replied gently, then let's keep it that way. Nobody needs to get hurt. Steven stepped forward slightly, voice deep but soothing. You're scared, I can see that. Fear makes the gun heavier and your hands less steady. Put it down and you'll feel the weight lift. The gunman hesitated. His grip trembled. What do you know about fear? Steven looked him straight in the eyes. That sometimes the scariest thing is doing the right thing because you don't know how it ends. The gunman's breathing slowed, a small sign of hope. But the third suspect, hidden behind the teller booths, panicked at the sight of police nearing the entrance. He shouted, "No, we're not going to jail." A sudden burst of noise erupted, shelves clattered, hostages gasped, and a young girl screamed. Riker's instinct flared, but for the first time, he didn't rush blindly. He didn't charge. He didn't let fear override judgment. He listened to the lesson Steven drilled into him. Control comes before action. Riker made a decision. He stepped inside, slowly, hands raised. "Look at me," Riker shouted, but his voice wasn't aggressive. It was commanding without rage, firm without forceful. "Nobody fires, not today." The third suspect whipped around and fired a panicked warning shot into the ceiling. Riker didn't flinch. Steven, standing beside him, whispered softly, "Redirect fear, don't meet it with your own." Riker nodded subtly, then he spoke again, voice steady, breathing controlled. "Listen, you don't want blood on your hands. I know you don't. You're scared, you're desperate, but shooting won't fix anything." The gunman's hands shook violently. Tears built in his eyes. Steven stepped forward. "Give me the gun. You walk out alive. Nobody gets hurt. That's the best ending you're going to find." The gunman blinked. You're Steven Seagal." Steven gave a faint smile. "Not today. Today, I'm the guy trying to get you home alive." That broke the tension. The gunman dropped the weapon. The second suspect followed, sliding his gun across the floor. Finally, the first suspect, the most terrified of them all, lowered his pistol and let it fall. Hostages began crying in relief, hugging one another. Riker exhaled, not just because the danger was over, but because he realized something. The man who once threw punches first had just prevented chaos with patience, clarity, and restraint. Steven looked at him with genuine pride. "You just passed the real test." Riker felt something he hadn't felt in years. Respect, not from others, but for himself. Back outside, cameras rolled. Reporters shouted questions. Captain Holt shook Steven's hand. "You saved lives today." Steven shook his head. "He saved lives today." He nodded toward Riker, but the moment that stunned everyone came next. A journalist pushed forward. "Officer Riker, yesterday you were suspended for misconduct. Today you helped prevent a hostage tragedy. What changed?" Riker looked at Steven, then faced the cameras. "Yesterday, I thought strength meant dominance. Today I learned strength means control. A man I disrespected taught me discipline and gave me a second chance." The crowd murmured, impressed. Steven added quietly, "And he earned it." Later that evening, the department held a small gathering to honor everyone involved in preventing the tragedy. Officers clapped Riker on the shoulder, congratulated him, and for the first time in years he felt like he belonged. Torres raised a soda can toward him. "Never thought I'd say this, but proud of you, man." Riker smirked. "Yeah, I'm surprised too." Steven approached last. Riker straightened instinctively, old habits, but Steven waved it off. "No need for that. You chose the right path." Riker nodded. "I couldn't have done it without you." Steven replied softly. "You did it because you finally saw the world clearly, not through anger, but through awareness." Riker held his gaze. "So, does this mean you'll keep teaching us?" Steven smiled. "As long as you're willing to learn." Riker extended a hand. Steven shook it. And in that moment, the man who once punched Steven Seagal now followed him as a mentor, a teacher, and a guide toward a better version of himself. As Steven walked out of the station, the night air felt calm, peaceful, balanced, smile and scars, because life teaches through both, and sometimes the deepest lessons come from the people we least expect.